Module 2 tackles those actions that take place when we're signing up for a brand new subscription of Microsoft Dynamics 365. We will focus on the process to sign up for a new subscription, understand the management tasks we can perform on user accounts from the Office 365 Admin Center, as well as some of the best practices when it comes to authorization in Dynamics 365 once the user account synchronized. And we will walk through the details behind the different Microsoft Online Services administrative roles that allows us to leverage decentralized command principles when managing our subscription. There are several ways to sign up for a subscription, but regardless of how the customer signs up, all subscriptions are managed through Microsoft Online Services, also known as the Microsoft Office 365 portal. Organizations can buy a subscription through that portal and also directly from within a 30-day trial of Microsoft Dynamics 365. Also, if the organization has an active volume license agreement with Microsoft, a new subscription can be created through that agreement. Although subscriptions can be purchased and are always managed through the Microsoft Office 365 Admin Center, a subscription to Office 365, although encouraged, is not required. Organizations enter contracts with Microsoft for Microsoft Dynamics 365 subscriptions, and one of the things that comes up once in a while is an organization wondering what's the process if they wanted to cancel their Microsoft Dynamics 365 subscription. Although new subscriptions can be easily enabled on the Office 365 Admin Center, cancellations are handled by billing support. And depending on the service terms and how much time is left in the agreement, the organization might be charged a cancellation fee. Cancellation fees don't apply to organizations looking to move from Microsoft Dynamics 365 Online to Microsoft Dynamics 365 on-premise or partner-hosted. Microsoft calls this procedure the power of choice. When an organization can justify a move to on-premise, they typically contact the customer service team and request a backup of their Dynamics 365 database for a trial power of choice migration. This backup will allow the organization to perform a full migration of their online instance into an on-premise environment. After testing has been completed and on-premise licensing has been sorted, the organization can request a final backup for a power of choice migration, at which point the backup will be provided and the subscription to Microsoft Dynamics 365 will be canceled without penalty. The cancellation of the online subscription disables the instances, which means the data within that instance will be deleted 30 days later. It is important for the organization not to request their final power of choice backup before first deciding if there's any data that needs to be exported before the instances become disabled. And of course, any other online subscription the organization has, such as Office 365 for example, will not be affected by the move to Dynamics 365 on-premise. In addition to new subscriptions, the Office 365 Admin Center allows organizations to purchase add-ons to be added to the subscription. Additional products such as Microsoft Flow or Premier support can be added through the Purchase Service section in the Office 365 Admin Center. In addition to services, organizations can also acquire additional instances and even storage to be added to their existing subscription. All of these capabilities are enabled on the Office 365 Admin Center. Users are also managed on the Office 365 Admin Center, where administrators can add users, manage the licenses that grant access to those users to the different services the organization has acquired, and of course, Microsoft Dynamics 365 users fall under this category. This means that Microsoft Dynamics 365 users have to be created as users in the Office 365 Admin Center. And the right Microsoft Dynamics 365 license must be assigned to the user before synchronization takes place and the user is created inside Microsoft Dynamics 365. Once the user account has been created and a license has been assigned, the user is able to complete the first step to access Dynamics 365 functionality, authentication. After the user is authenticated, the second and final step needed to reach Dynamics 365 data and functionality is called authorization. Authorization occurs when at least one security role has been assigned to the user. The single or multiple security roles assigned to that user will be used by Dynamics 365 to determine the level of authorization a user has inside an instance. Everything from the ability to edit their own personal settings to which records they can see and the actions they can perform with those records is controlled by the authorization process. Unlike Dynamics 365 on-premise, enabling and disabling a user is not performed in the web application, but in the Office 365 Admin Center. This means that administrators can control who has access to Dynamics 365 by simply enabling and disabling the user accounts on the Office 365 Admin Center. This is especially useful when a user takes a leave of absence and even when users leave the organization. There are many Microsoft Dynamics 365 actions we can perform on the Office 365 Admin Center. So let me show you a few of them. We will walk through creating users in the Office 365 Admin Center, assign to and remove licenses from those users, resetting the user's password, and a couple of other user account management functions, and also how to find the users you have disabled in the past through the Office 365 Admin Center. Let me show you.
To add a user, we're going to navigate to the Office 365 admin portal. We do that by going to portal.office.com. And in here, we're going to go into the admin center by clicking on admin. Once the system loads up, you get a couple of messages welcoming you to the admin center if it's the first time you log in. But here we're going to expand users. We're going to click on active users. So you can see there's only one user, which is me. So let's go ahead and add a new one. I'm going to click on add user. We're going to name this user John Doe. And for the username, I'm just going to use John. You can select the location obviously here, and there's a little bit more information. For example, you see right here the contact information contains all the fields like job title, department, office, and office phone, and so on. These fields also synchronize to Dynamics 365, so you can populate them and have that information synchronized over. Also, you can decide whether the password for this new user will be automatically generated by the system or if you want to create a password yourself. It all depends on how you want to do it. Also, you notice that you have the option to make this user change the password when they first sign in into Dynamics 365. That's always the best practice. You always want to protect yourself as an administrator. You want the users to be able to be the only ones that know their password. So this is one of those checkboxes that I always leave on. And then the roles right here basically allow you to specify if this user will have special permissions or administrative rights within the Office 365 Admin Center. We will talk more about user administration on another demo later in this module. Then I'm going to scroll down here where it says product licenses, and notice that here's where we can assign the license to the respective subscription. For example, right here we have 24 licenses available for Dynamics 365 Plan 1 Enterprise Edition. And if we had another subscription to, for example, Office 365 or some other service, we would be able to add the licenses through here. So I'm going to make sure that the license has been enabled for the user, and I'm going to click on Add. Now notice that the password has been automatically generated in this case, and I can also send the password in an email to the user or to myself. Typically what I like to do as a best practice is I like to email it to myself, because you always want to include a little bit more information on the email to the user, something like, in addition to the URL and the username and password for them to log in into Dynamics 365, I always like to include information like, for example, if you run into any issues, here are some useful email addresses or phone numbers you can call to, and etc. You can include some more information once you add the user. That's always the best practice. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and accept them to send them a password to my email, and I'm going to go ahead and send the email and close. Now, as we mentioned, users are created on the Office 365 side, and the authentication is done by Azure Active Directory. So it takes a couple of seconds for the users to synchronize between Office 365 or the Office 365 Admin Center and Dynamics 365. So I'm going to go ahead and close my tab here. And I'm going to go back into my security area within Dynamics 365. Notice that I go to settings, then security. Within security, I'm going to navigate to users. And you can see that John Doe has been already synchronized into Dynamics 365. Now, this synchronization doesn't really allow John Doe to log in or to access Dynamics 365. In order for John Doe to be able to do that, it has to go through a two-step process. The first one being the authentication step, which is enabled by John having a username and password, which is what we just created, and also having a license to access Dynamics 365. The second step is what we call authorization, and that step is enabled by John having a security role. So I would have to assign a security role to this user. In this case, it could be something like salesperson, for example, and click OK. This will then enable John to be able to log in into the system now that I have authorized access for John. Now, notice that John remains as an enabled user as long as the user has a license. And one of the things that we talked about was the fact that removing a license will make sure that the user becomes disabled. So let's take a look how that works. So we're going to go back to our portal and the Office Admin Center. And we're going to navigate back to my active users and select John. Now there are a couple of ways to decline or remove access to Dynamics 365. One of them would be to simply delete the user, which will basically accomplish the same on the Dynamics 365 side. It will make the user disabled. It will not remove the user from Dynamics 365. Users are never deleted, but the user will be disabled and the license available or assigned to this user will become available for assignment to other users. The other way that we can also, prevent John to be able to log in or to access Dynamics 365 is by editing the license that is available to him. So I can go ahead and remove Dynamics 365 Plan 1 and click on Save. Now again, the changes that we're making are on the Office 365 Admin Center, which means that it takes a couple of seconds for that change to synchronize between the Admin Center, Office 365 Admin Center, and Dynamics 365. But let's go back and take a look and see if John has been disabled as a user. Now before I do that, notice that the user status already changed to on license. That means that the user hasn't really received any access to any other subscription or any subscription for that matter in Office 365. So every time you have a user that doesn't have any license assigned to him or her, you will see the word on license from here, and that is basically telling you that they don't really have access to any subscription. So let's go into Dynamics 365 again and notice that we are on the Enable Users view, which is the view that we left behind. So now I'm just going to go ahead and refresh. And you notice that the user John has disappeared from the Enable Users list. However, if I go back into my views and all the different options, I can go into Disable Users. You notice that there are some sample users in here because I'm using a trial of Dynamics 365, but one of the users that has been disabled is John Doe. Now notice that even though he has been disabled, the role assignment and all of the basically settings that I have created before will remain with the user, which means that if John was taking a leave of absence or he was out for a while, I can always remove the license, use it with another user, and then give it back to John, or maybe purchase some extra licenses if that license has been permanently assigned to another user. But that's the idea, that we can remove the license, make sure the user is disabled in Dynamics 365, keeping all of the history as attached to that user. And then when the user comes back, if he or she comes back, we're able to reassign the license and bring the user back from disabled into enabled.
When organizations deploy Microsoft Dynamics 365, there are many cases where integrations with other systems, such as ERP systems, need to be established. In those cases, organizations can leverage the power of non-interactive users. Non-interactive users are user records that can be used for programmatic access to Dynamics 365. This means having a user account not used by a human, but rather a data integration solution. These users don't require a license, and organizations can have up to 5 non-interactive users that can be leveraged for those data integration scenarios. So there's plenty of opportunity for multiple integration points. As we mentioned earlier, once the user accounts have been created in the Microsoft Office 365 Admin Center and a license has been assigned to them, users will synchronize to Microsoft Dynamics 365. Out of the box, user accounts created in the Office 365 Admin Center are authenticated by Azure Active Directory. This means that users will have a different set of credentials when logging into Microsoft Dynamics 365 than the ones they use to log in into a corporate network. To reduce account administration, it is advised that organizations establish a federation or a trust between their internal Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. This would also eliminate the need to remember separate account details by the users. The idea behind establishing the trust between the organization's internal Active Directory and Azure Active Directory is that users can log into Office 365, which includes Dynamics 365, with their internal user credentials. Account administration is reduced simply because users get to use the same username and password they have been using to log into the corporate network until now. Any solution that improves efficiency on the user side will translate into reduced administration and management workload for the administrators. The integration between the organization's internal Active Directory and Azure Active Directory is achieved by leveraging Active Directory Federation services. This service allows users to authenticate into their internal environment rather than Azure Active Directory hosted in the cloud. When this authentication happens at the PC level, the authentication token is passed through to Azure Active Directory and the user will be seamlessly logged into Office 365. This is a major convenience for all users with access to Microsoft Online Services solutions such as Microsoft Dynamics 365. The process to enable the synchronization and trust has many steps. Some of the steps must be accomplished outside of Office 365, such as the need to deploy publicly trusted certificates and Active Directory trusts. So if you want to set up pass-through authentication and trust, visit the link you see on this slide for detailed step-by-step instructions and information. The permissions granted by administrative roles varies by Office 365 product, but overall, the idea of Microsoft Online Services Administrator roles is to allow other users to help manage the subscription, users, and services available to the organization. Users can be granted the Global Administrator role, which allows the users to perform any management or action available in the Office 365 Admin Center. There are also multiple custom administrator roles that can be leveraged when an organization wants to grant limited admin capabilities to a user on the organization. We have roles that, for example, allow users to reset other users' passwords, such as the Password Administrator role, which is a valuable asset to have in organizations where users forget their passwords often. Another example is the User Management Administrator, who is able to manage users and the licenses assigned to them. Again, these are just a couple of examples from all of the roles that may be available to an organization in the Office 365 Admin Center. When a user receives the Global Administrator or Service Administrator role, the user is automatically added to Microsoft Dynamics 365. However, the access type for this user will be set as administrative, with the System Administrator Security role assigned for authorization purposes. Since these users are immediately synchronized, a license is not needed to allow these users to administer Dynamics 365. However, this type of access does not allow users to see any records on the sales, marketing, or customer service sections of Microsoft Dynamics 365. This means that for organizations that require their Dynamics 365 system administrators to work with and see all of the data and functionality stored in the instance, they must receive a full user license that grants them the ability to switch their access type from administrative to read and write. To wrap up this module, let's walk through the steps required to add users to Office 365 with the administrator role, or how to grant the new administrator role to an existing user. We will also switch to Dynamics 365 to make sure that the newly created service administrator has synchronized over and has an administrative access type. We will also switch to Dynamics 365 to make sure that the newly created service administrator has synchronized over and has an administrative access type.
To review administrative access, I'm going to go ahead and add a new user into Office 365 and the Office 365 Admin Center. And what I'll do this time around is that I will grant administrative rights to the user on the Office 365 side, but I will not assign a license to the user. So we can look at what happens when the user gets synchronized into Dynamics 365. So let's go ahead and add a brand new user here. This user will be Alan Jackson. And for the username, we're just going to leave Alan. Now, notice right here on the roles, instead of just saying that Alan is a regular user, I'm going to make him a global administrator. Now notice that if I want to select a different admin role, I can just go ahead and select Customize Administrator and then select whichever role I decide that Alan will be in this case, or this user will be in this case, that is less than a global administrator getting access to everything. So I could, for example, make Alan a password administrator, so Alan could help users to reset their passwords when they forget. Or, for example, I could make Alan an Exchange admin or a user management admin, where Alan will be able to basically perform management tasks with users beyond just resetting passwords. It could be adding users to groups or security groups or Office 365 groups, etc. So the idea is to grant permissions to a user so you can get some help as an admin on the Office 365 side. So in this case, I'm just going to keep it simple, make Alan a global administrator. And then on the product licenses side, so I'll make sure to say that I'm going to create this user without a product license. I'm going to click add and go ahead and send the email and close. So now the user has been added to the list, and notice that just like we saw before when we removed the license from John Doe, the new user, Alan Jackson, has been marked as an unlicensed user. However, because Alan is a brand new global administrator, the user will be actually synchronized with Dynamics 365 and receive a system administrator role. So they will be automatically authorized to access Dynamics 365 based on his global admin status. So let's take a look. Let's go back to Dynamics 365 and refresh. And as you can see, Alan Jackson just showed up into Dynamics 365 as a brand new user. So let's open him up and take a look at the settings that have been set based on his global administrator status within the Office 365 Admin Center. So the first thing we're going to take a look here is the roles that are assigned to this user. Notice that right by default, without me making any changes, Alan has been configured as a system administrator. Also notice that if we take a look at the administration section within the user form, you will notice that the access mode has been set to administrative. What this means is that Alan would be able to log in into Dynamics 365 and perform administrative tasks and changes in the system. However, he won't be able to see any of the accounts and contacts and all of the other data that is basically connected to customer records in Dynamics 365.
In summary, this module focused on how to start a subscription and how users can be added to that subscription so they can access all of the functionality available. We also discussed the benefits of account synchronization and Active Directory federation, and we wrapped up the module with details and a demo regarding the process of adding Office 365 administrator roles to users in the Office 365 Admin Center.